Intertextuality is where you're able to reference a media text within a different media text. Honestly, in my opinion, I think this is one of the most creative film styles, because it just answers unanswered questions for me, and it shows like it kind of brings back like memories from different movies or shows, and it kind of like gets me more excited to watch the movie. One uh one show, or I mean one movie that has intellectuality that I barely found out about was Star Wars. I didn't want to watch Star Wars at first, but when I started to watch it, I started to understand it more. So I started with episode 4, and I was very, very confused because I did not know what was going on. I did not know like what these characters' stories were about. And midway through the movie, I was watching it with my boyfriend, and he pushed me to watch it. And midway through the movie, he said, let's go back and watch episode 2, because he said episode 1 was boring. But he said, let's watch episode 2. So we watched episode 2, and like as I'm watching episode 2 and 3, it starts to make more sense, like how Darth Vader became Darth Vader and what little things happened in his life that caused him to do this. And as I'm watching the movie, he references a show called Clone Wars, which is a big part of the intertextuality, because it it shows characters from the movie, and it shows like these little Easter eggs. And so Clone Wars takes place in between episode 2 and 3. So as you're watching episode 3, you're understanding more about these characters because you watch Clone Wars and you see like these characters that appeared in Clone Wars, and it kind of takes you back and makes you understand the movie more. So I think that's a big thing about intellectuality, which makes it so much more interesting, that it makes you understand the movie or show you're watching more. Um, Another way Star Wars uses intertextuality is by using Easter eggs from the comic books. So as I'm watching the movie, my boyfriend like mentions little things about the characters from the comic books. So you kind of need to watch. I mean, you kind of need to read the comic books to get a better understanding of of the characters, or like how it takes place or whatever it is. So I think that's how it uses intertextuality. Like you have to like put the pieces together to understand it more, which makes it so much more interesting. Another big movie that uses intertextuality was Ralph Breaks the Internet. Um, it uses it in so many ways. So it mentions, like princesses. It brings Disney princesses. It brings characters from video games. It brings, apps that you would see on social media. So, in the scene where Ralph and Vanellope go to the Game Central, which is where all the characters from all the video games gather together. You can see, if you look closely, you can see characters from other video games, other shows, other whatever. So I noticed Bowser from Super Mario. I noticed many like sports players. So like the soccer players, the basketball players, the football players. You could see from those like games like um, Madden NFL, and then like the games like FIFA from like the soccer, and then I also noticed Buzz from Toy Story. There was also a video that like points out all the characters, so you see like um, just characters from different um, video games, and it kind of brings back like it kind of makes you think back like, oh my gosh, like this movie is like very creative because it's using these, um, these characters from these video games, which like makes it so much more creative because it's what you would imagine like a game central being like, where all the characters, if they're taking a break from, being in that video game, this is where they would come. And it's imaginary, but it makes it so much more creative. There's also a scene in the movie where and also this movie is a sequel. I mean, a sequel to the previous movie. So obviously, it shows characters from the previous movie, and there's also another one where Vanellope goes to the internet, and you see apps like Twitter, you see apps like Google, you see apps like Facebook, and you even see things like you would see, like, you're on the computer, and you're on a website, and a virus pops up, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so annoying, and it's always popping up when you're trying to do other things, and then you click on it and it takes you to a sketchy website. Like, it has those little things that would bring you back to a time where you would get, irritated, or it kind of makes it more realistic, even though it's a fictional movie. Um, there's also a scene in the movie where Vanellope gets lost, and she bumps into the Star Wars, the stormtroopers, and they're very mean in the movie, so they're mean to Vanellope, and it kind of brings you back to the movie, and it makes you think of Star Wars. And then she runs away, and then she bumps into all these other characters along the way, and she ends up going into a room with the Disney princesses. And as she's talking to the Disney princesses, they talk about how, they reference their movies. They one of them says like, all of them say like, Vanellope says, the only thing I can relate to you, something along the lines of, the only thing I can relate to you is that like, everybody thinks that a man is here to save us, and then all the girls are like, yes, because that's what all their movies are about. And along the way, they reference the movies, and they talk about their musicals and stuff like that. Another big movie is the Marvel and the DC's movies. They reference so many from the comic books, even their shows like The Flash on the CW, Arrow, like all those shows, they all tie together to the movies, and they reference from the comic books. And as if I know the movie The Flash is coming out, and they also have a show called Gotham. They all tie together within each other. And there's also The Flash, Supergirl, and Arrow. I know that all those shows overlap with each other. They'll have crossovers, and so when you're watching an episode from a crossover and you see a character from that other show, it kind of like, it all makes sense because they'll reference, their lives, what's going on with their lives, and you're like, oh, I saw that from, that episode or whatever. So this is the whole point of intertextuality. I find it so interesting that it's so creative. It I think this is like one of my most favorite um, styles of filmmaking, because I don't know, it just makes me reference. And especially when you're, reading a book and you watch a movie and you're kind of disappointed because the movie doesn't have, all the things that happen in the book, obviously, because, the movie doesn't have enough time to do that. But you're kind of, there's downfalls to it because, when you're watching, reading a book and you're watching that movie and you're disappointed by it. But there's also good sides, like when you're watching those shows and they have crossovers and you're like, oh my gosh, like I saw that in that episode. So there is downfalls to it, but I think when, you're watching shows that overlap, movies that overlap, or, you're watching a movie and it comes out with a prequel or a sequel and it just all makes sense together and they'll have Easter eggs along the way, it just makes it that more exciting for me. And I mean, I think that's my favorite part of filmmaking.